Time to address some things that aren't big enough to warrant their own videos. Nothing related to battle though, that'll get its own Little Things video later on. This is Little Things Miscellanea. Now let's get started. First time I played Persona 5, I admittedly used a guide for some things. Quite a few things really, but I didn't follow a day-to-day guide. Not that there's anything wrong with a day-to-day guide, you should play the game whatever way you enjoy most. Personally though, I wanted to be in charge of managing my time, and I did so fully accepting that this meant I most likely would not be able to complete all confidants. As I was making my way through the middle of the game, things were looking more and more certain that there would be at least a few I wouldn't have time to max. Enter the Fortune Confidant. Sure, that 100,000 entry fee is a bit rough, but after I had a full stock of SP adhesives, I managed to find the necessary cash. Before I knew it, December was here and I had fuck all to do with my time. Well, not quite fuck all. I ended up getting the read all books trophy, cause why the fuck not? But my confidants were all done with weeks to spare. Seriously, how does broken as fuck Chihaya get through design and test without anyone pointing out how stupidly overpowered she is? If you don't know why she breaks the social game, I'll leave you to look up the details yourself. But why can you do every type of reading each day? Why can you do them every day it's not raining? Why not one reading a day? Why not one reading of each type per week? And honestly, I'm not sure that'd be enough of a nerf, but it's a fucking start. You'd think with such a nice stylish menu for your confidants, they'd have added a little note or icon or something to let me know which ones are ready to rank up. I mean, it'd be one thing if they didn't want me to have that info, but they tell me at the end of spending time with the confidant, aside from rank ups, show me on the map when the confidant is available to talk to, and let me know whenever I'm about to spend time with them. Honestly, this might just be a case of nobody thought to, or perhaps they figured there's no point since they show it to you at any time you might need it. And I may have agreed, until I started abusing Chihaya. To know whose affinity fortune to pay for, I had to start taking note of who's ready to rank up. At that point, it got pretty fucking annoying. And speaking of annoying things in the menu, I've got a few others I want to complain about. For one, the item menu could have greatly benefited from a little more organization. Like, why is Water of Rebirth so far away from the other SP restoring items? The list gets pretty long and it can often take a minute to find the item I'm looking for. At least with the Water of Rebirth though, it has a nifty little SP indicator in its icon. Something that I think could have been far more utilized. Like, give attack items their elements icon, and status effect curing items some sort of icon. Really, it was a pretty good idea they had. They just forgot to use it for most types of items. Also, it would have been nice if items like the tomatoes and curries told you they couldn't be used in battle. Spend a few minutes searching for those during a boss fight. And on the topic of descriptions, the equipment screen should show you what your equipped shit does while selecting the slot. Got annoying to have to find my currently equipped in the list to compare to whatever else I'm considering equipping. I mean, it's not like there's a shortage of screen real estate on the equip menu. And here's something that pissed me off. In the party menu, the square button toggles active party members while X shows the party member's info. In the persona menu, X sets your active persona and square shows you the persona's info. I hit the wrong button so many fucking times in these menus. Is a little consistency really too much to ask for? Oh, and one more little thing. I really wish I could rearrange persona skills right after fusing them. It's kind of annoying to have to go into the menu to do it afterwards, especially since I often forgot to do so. Anyway, that's all the complaints I've got for the menu. Almost. Time management is a fairly important aspect of Persona 5, so obviously the developers are going to implement a shitty bare-bones useless calendar. Wait, that sentence didn't sound right. Well, let me try again. Time management is a fairly important aspect of Persona 5, so obviously the developers are going to implement a robust, highly customizable calendar. A way to bring up today's calendar at the push of a button, maybe a list of available confidants with their current ranks, definitely a way to add my own items to the calendar, like a weekly reminder to buy juice on Sundays, when I need to get a new library book, when to pull my carrot out of Haru's secret garden. And of course there's a way to mark tasks as done, not to mention a way to mark when I intend to go palacing. It's so nice that my teammates stop bitching about going to the palace every day once I mark the calendar to let them know when we'll be going. Yeah, that sounds better. Oh, I had it right the first time. Well, back to my laptop. I fucking hate silent protagonists, but I don't feel like getting into that right now. I will take a moment to address one of the side effects of our silent protagonist though, as this is something that Persona 5 in particular made me roll my eyes to quite a bit. Non-choices. That is, dialogue choices where all selectable answers say the same fucking thing. If my only choices are to say, fuck off or go fuck yourself, that's not a choice. It's what I want the developers to do when they give me these stupid non-choices. Seriously, how is shoving these non-choices in your face preferable to having Joker just say it himself? Even considering the typical goal of a silent protagonist, to allow the player to feel like they're in control of the main character, I feel like non-choices like this break the immersion even more than just having Joker speak would, since they're calling extra attention to the fact that you don't actually have a choice. Then again, I fucking hate silent protagonists, so maybe I just don't get it. I feel like the party's standards are radically different when it comes to targeting people in mementos. I mean, we spend a lot of time deliberating whether or not we should go after Okumura, but when we hear about someone cheating at a video game, everybody's instantly on board. Seriously, we're fucking with these people's psyches. I don't think the Phantom Thieves can justify going after some of these mementos targets. Anyway, the random battles in mementos really need something to make them more interesting. And I know I'm not supposed to be talking about anything battle related, but I'm already talking about mementos, so fuck it. Now, back when I was coming up with stuff I wanted to write about, I made a note about a lack of enemy variety. But when I replayed the game, there was actually a fair amount more variety than I had remembered. Except when it comes to mementos. Here, the large majority of the enemies you fight are the same enemies you fought in the previous palace. In fact, assuming I filled out my chart right, which I probably didn't, only 13 of the 95 non-boss enemies you can find in mementos can't be fought in a palace. Of those, 2 are treasure demons and 4 were mini-bosses in the preceding palace. This leaves a whole 7 non-boss enemies unique to mementos. Throw in some randomly generated layouts and you've got yourself a dungeon that I have very little interest exploring. I don't actually mind the randomly generated floors in mementos. They did plenty of good dungeon design in the palaces, so doing something different and easier in mementos is fine as far as I'm concerned. But if they're gonna make the exploration boring, they've gotta do something more interesting with the enemies. Even just a gimmick of some sort. Mementos is supposed to be the public's collective cognition, so maybe put fights with lots of enemies in mementos. Like 6 to 10 at once. Or give enemies random buffs and shit, like Futaba does for your party, that get stronger the further down you get. Or they could just, add more variety to the shadows you fight. Early on, there aren't many that go unused, but past level 20 or so, at least a third of the personas aren't. I'm guessing the reason for this is that they want a decent amount of personas to be fusion only, but, why? It's not like that would make fusing noticeably less appealing, unless you're just trying to fill the compendium. I guess that would be easier. But who actually uses personas they recruit? They come with hardly any skills and no bonus levels. In other words, they're fusion fodder. And if there's a different reason they don't want to use more personas as shadows, I'm not thinking of it. I guess it's possible that Mementos is supposed to just be a boring grinding area outside of the bosses. If that was their goal, then well done, I suppose. But it was still annoying having to run through each new path. Persona 5 does a wonderful job adding ways for all the various confidants to benefit you. Honestly, good job with that. But this is mostly a one-way street. Your social game benefits your dungeoning, but your dungeoning does very little to benefit your social game. For the most part, the only benefit is the affinity bonus you get for having Persona of the matching arcana while spending time with a confidant. And sadly, I'm not really a fan of this. It doesn't take long to get your first persona of most arcana, and once you've done so, this mechanic is basically reduced to hitting up the compendium to buy whatever cheap little shitter you need for the confidant you're about to talk to. In other words, a chore, and I guess a small money sink. I find neither of these things add any depth or enjoyment to the game. So what could be done? In a similar theme to the matching arcana bonus, you could get a direct point gain to a confidant whenever you first obtain a new persona of the associated arcana. A little extra incentive to fill up that compendium. This would probably mean you should also allow confidant affinity points to carry over between ranks, though honestly, I think I'd prefer that to be the case anyway. You could also add optional challenge fights throughout the game, one for each arcana, at least the ones where affinity points matter, and defeating these bosses gives you a one-time affinity boost for the confidant. Also, defeating these bosses could give you a point or two of guts. And while we're at it, let's give some knowledge for solving optional puzzles, as well as perhaps for solving required puzzles on the first try or without asking your teammates for hints. And for proficiency, have some skill-based challenges, like getting across that one roof in Kamoshida's castle without fighting any of the powerful enemies. And, okay, this is getting a bit harder. Charm, I suppose, could be gained for recruiting new persona, because you kind of have to charm them during the negotiation, and that would leave kindness. Maybe you gain kindness for completing mementos missions? Does that make sense? I'll pretend it does. Anyways, the point is that there should be some things you can do in the dungeon crawling side of the game that reward you in the social side. So those are some of the littler things I felt like bitching about. What do you think? Like any of the suggested improvements? Got any of your own little complaints? Think I'm complaining about a whole lot of nothing? Or that my suggestions would make the game worse? Wish any of these topics had gotten a full video? Let me know and have an awesome day. Why does the game make a point of your party commenting about Joker going comatose on them the first time he enters the Velvet Room in a palace? Why doesn't Joker tell them about the Velvet Room? Why don't they seem concerned about subsequent comatoses? Then again, I suppose standing around and staring blankly like a brainless moron is Joker's natural state. Maybe they just never noticed after the first time.